Good morning, friends. Welcome back to Locally Raised. I am sitting here with my raspberry plants that I am finally going to plant out today. It is really spring now, I think. All week we have a forecast with lows that are above freezing, and I think we might actually be past our last frost. I am so happy to be outside today and to be working in the garden. So I'm going to load up these raspberry plants into a tray and take them over to where they're going to go in the ground. I bought these raspberry plants a couple weeks ago from somebody on the Facebook Marketplace. He was selling off shoots from his raspberry plants because they were thicker than he wanted. When I got them, they were just dormant sticks. You can see most of these, well, 3 of them have really filled out in the last few weeks. This one just started to get some green on it. This guy, I was worried he might be dead, but he's got the littlest green shoot. This one I'm less optimistic about. Just this morning, the stick broke off. I'm not sure if I'm going to see any new growth out of here. I think I'll try planting this, but I'm not counting on getting anything from it. My dad came over a few weeks ago and used his rototiller to dig out this spot for me in the yard where I went my raspberries. I'm not at all confident that this soil is fertile. It's very rocky. I've been pulling rocks out of it. My daughter and I cleared the grass clumps together. So I'm going to put a little bit of compost in here before I put these raspberries in. Look at how nice and loose this is compared with the soil that was here. It's clay soil. I can squeeze it and it kind of holds into a ball. So I'm really glad that I'm working this in. That'll give the roots room to expand. Although I've added compost to this soil, it's only on the surface. I know those roots that are down deep still need more nutrients. So I'm going to toss some bone meal into each hole and allow that to feed the roots, and hopefully these will develop strong root systems. You can see how clay-like the soil is as I get down deeper. It's just clay. The description of this Heritage Raspberry plant says that it is tolerant of different soil types. Hopefully that's true. And between that and the amendments I've made, I can still get something strong in this clay soil. As I mentioned, this is the Heritage Raspberry plant, and the recommended spacing for it is 3 to 4 feet apart. I want to be sure to give these plenty of space because I know that they spread and continue to send out shoots, and so I'm hoping over the next few years this becomes a very full berry patch. I was excited about this variety after doing a little bit of research because it is tolerant of different soil types, and it doesn't require staking, so that makes my life easier, that I don't have to build a trellis. And also, these are an ever-bearing variety, so they'll produce a flush of berries in July, and then they'll start producing again in September and produce up until frost. I don't expect to get much of a harvest this first year, but I'm hopeful that in future years I'll have enough berries to not only feed us during the summer, but freeze for smoothies and maybe some jams. It feels so good to see those in the ground. I started this channel because I'm on a journey to change the way I source my family's food, and growing more fruit is definitely part of that. We have grown strawberries in the past year, and that's it. So now I can add raspberries to that list, and hopefully that's fewer trips to the grocery store. My hose, unfortunately, does not reach all the way out here, so I'm going to go fill a watering can and get these watered. It's done. That has been on my to-do list for about a month. Hopefully in a couple months, I'll be filming myself eating the first raspberries. The rest of today's work is in my garden area that borders the cornfield. Ooh, branch. I've been working hard to try to get leaves out of that garden. We had a really windy winter, so there were lots of leaves blown in there, even though we cleaned up in the fall. And I've also been working on weeds. There are lots of weeds as well. So I'm not done yet. If I scan the garden, you'll be able to see what I have and haven't done yet. Here, let me show you. Here's the portion I haven't done. This will be flowers. And then over here, there's like a line. You can see where I have weeded and cleared leaves. So the work is never done, and that's okay. What I wanted to make sure I had for today was a clear space here, because we're going to plant green beans. But first, I need to give this soil a little bit of compost so it's got all the nutrients it needs for a round of green beans. I'm using mushroom compost here. Ideally, I like to use compost that comes from multiple materials, not just one single source, because some of the benefit of compost comes from the diversity of microorganisms in the soil, and you'll get more diversity if the compost has multiple materials in it. However, I'm also functioning within a budget, so I sprang for the best compost for my raspberry plants, and this bed I'm just amending with a bit of mushroom compost because it's very affordable. The soil in this bed is dense and compacted, so I'm digging up each portion of the bed to loosen up the soil and aerate it, but also to incorporate that compost. Then I rake through one final time, aiming to break up a lot of the clumps that remain, and finally the bed is ready for planting. My space for my green beans is finally ready to plant. It's gotten really windy. I hope you can still hear me just fine, but I want to get these in the ground because it's going to rain in a couple hours, and so it'd just be perfect to have these seeds in the ground and then get soaked with a good rain. So I'm planting two kinds of beans. The first is a Dragon Tongue. They're both Baker Creek. So the first is Dragon Tongue. Let me see. There you can kind of see what it looks like. The beans are sort of speckled, and these have both been soaking overnight. The Dragon Tongue I really love because it's tender and it's got a good flavor. I've been growing it for a couple years. Last year I froze it for the first time. I'd never preserved them before, and I didn't love how it was coming out of the freezer. It just kind of got a little mushy in the blanching and freezing process. So I'm hoping this next bean will do a little bit better in terms of preservation. And that's the Jade bean. That one's also been soaking overnight. It looks like this. It's more of a classic green bean, but it's on the skinny side, a little closer to kind of those skinny French green beans. So I've not eaten this one before. I've just heard the flavor is good, and I'm looking forward to giving it a try. Let's get these in the ground. I'm spacing these seeds about 4 inches apart in rows. Sometimes I get precise and measure these things out, and then sometimes I just eyeball it, and this is an eyeball it kind of day. I've learned that things work best if I don't cover the seeds as I go. I place out an entire bed of seeds and then cover everything, because otherwise I just lose track of where I've planted and I have all sorts of spacing issues. In order to maximize my space, I also stagger my rows so that plants are alternating from one row to the next, and this allows me to place rows a little more closely together for an intensive planting. luck would have it, my microphone died here. If you can read lips, feel free to let me know what I actually said, but I'm sure it was something to the effect of, the wind is picking up, it's about to rain, let's get inside and do some work on my seed potatoes. The last garden task I want to accomplish today is prepping my seed potatoes. I'm growing two kinds of potatoes this year. One is the Eva, which is a new one for me, and the other is Kennebec. Here's an example of that one. So both of these are mid-season potatoes. Potatoes come in early, mid, and late season varieties. These terms refer to when the potatoes are harvested, not when they're planted. So these mid-season potatoes will take about 80 to 95 days to reach maturity, and that works great for me. I should have gotten them in the ground probably a few weeks ago, but better late than never, they'll be fine. The Eva potato is a new variety for me, as I mentioned, and I read that it has a starchy texture. It's good for cooking, mashed potatoes, things like that, which I like, and it also stores well. But one of the things it's known for is that it has really uniform tuber sizes. It's kind of funny. It's not a description I've read of a potato before, but I'll show you another one. They do seem really uniform, and I've been on a French fry kick. So these I think will cut up nicely for French fries in my air fryer. I'm excited to give them a try. So let's get them prepped for planting. Some of the seed potatoes have multiple well-developed eyes. You see this one's got one good eye here and one over here. So I'm going to cut that in half and get myself two seed potatoes, making sure each half has an eye for its own plant. You'll see there's a lot of moisture on the cut part. I don't want to put that straight into the ground because I run the risk of it rotting. So I'm going to place these in a tray and give that cut portion a chance to scar over. I'll place the cut portion up so that it gets the most airflow, and then in a day or two, once it's scarred over, I can put it in the soil without risk of it rotting. You'll see that some of these potatoes only have one well-developed set of eyes. So for example, there's just nothing over here that's worth cutting out. So some of these I'll leave whole and just plant as is. Over the past fall and winter, I've really been trying to pay close attention to what my family eats and how much we eat of it so that I can plan our summer garden around our needs. And I discovered that we eat a lot of potatoes. We recently switched to being mostly gluten-free, and we've kind of shifted our starch consumption to potatoes. So we've been tearing through potatoes lately. I don't think I'll be able to grow enough potatoes to meet all of our needs for the year, but I'll aim to grow a couple months worth. Thanks for joining me for a day of garden work. This is our first spring at this property, and so it seems like we've just reached a point where we have all the energy we need and the right timing and the resources to start on all these projects that we envisioned when we moved here. So in the next couple weeks, we'll be building a chicken coop for the chicks that we just got. I've ordered a nucleus of bees. John just built 4 new raised beds that we'll soon be filling with soil and building trellises for. So there's lots underway to help us start to grow and raise more of our own food. I invite you to subscribe and follow along with the journey, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, bye.